Brand-named compact, subcompact, and micro-compact pistols and snub-nose revolvers these days come in all shapes and sizes. Though they all differ from each other as far as chambering, ammo capacity, ergonomics, and price, they all have two things in common. One, they're significantly easier to carry concealed compared to their full-size brethren. And two, with modern gun manufacturing methodologies, they're all fairly reliable and will get the job done. For these reasons, choosing a defensive pistol or revolver shouldn't be hard, at least in theory. But with the sheer number of models to choose from, it can be confusing and downright difficult to make a decision. More so if you're being asked for a recommendation by a loved one who's pushing 60 or 70. If you're in such a situation, stick around to the end of this video, and we may be able to help you help them. The best concealed carry handgun I can recommend for senior citizens suffering from arthritis or carpal tunnel syndrome is one that's custom tuned by a gunsmith. If they prefer a pistol, its recoil spring can be replaced with a lighter recoil spring to make it easier to rack its slide. If they prefer a revolver, its fire control group can be polished and its mainspring can be replaced with a lighter mainspring for a smoother and lighter double-action trigger pull. Of course, doing such customizations may result in stovepipes and feeding issues in pistols and lighter primer strikes in revolvers, but those are topics for another day. Now that that's out of the way, here are my top 5 concealed carry weapons for senior citizens. Number 1, the Ruger LCP-2 Light Rack 22LR. Ruger's lightweight compact pistol, or LCP, was the company's take on a highly concealable lightweight pistol marketed towards both law enforcement and civilians. Released in 2008, it was the company's first entry into the world of ultra-compact pocket carry pistols chambered for the .380 Auto. 8 years after its introduction, in 2016, the company released the LCP-2, a slightly bigger version of the original LCP, still chambered for the .380 ACP, but with a number of updates. For their intended purpose, both the LCP and LCP-2 remain popular among civilians long after their release. 2 years ago, Ruger introduced their LCP-2 Light Rack, which they aptly named as it was primarily designed with an easy-to-rack slide for people with a weak grip, specifically senior citizens suffering from arthritis. This version of the LCP-2 is chambered for the 22LR and has an advertised trigger pull weight of 5.5 pounds. Its chambering is nowhere near as powerful as its predecessors or the other handgun models I'm about to talk about, but it doesn't need to be. Naysayers in the community find the 22LR cartridge questionable at best and inadequate at worst for self-defense, but the truth of the matter is no one wants to get hit by any bullet no matter how tiny it is. Besides, the 22LR makes up for its ballistic shortcomings with its non-existent felt recoil. And one other thing to consider when it comes to firearms chambered in 22LR, ammo manufacturers do come up with some really good options from time to time. Take Federal's new 29-grain 22LR Punch, for example. It has an advertised muzzle velocity of 1,080 feet per second out of a 2-inch test barrel, which to me is about as good as it gets when it comes to 22LR defensive loads. The LCP-2 Light Rack has a magazine capacity of 10 rounds, and its barrel that measures 2 3/4 of an inch is slightly longer than Federal's test barrel, which means the Federal Punch will have a higher velocity when fired from the LCP-2 Light Rack, and with an MSRP of $350, it's one of the more budget-friendly pieces I can recommend. Number 2, Smith & Wesson M&P Shield EZ. The EZ in this handgun's name says it all. Smith & Wesson touts this variant of their M&P Shield line of pistols as a must-have for people who need a highly concealable, polymer-framed handgun with an easy-to-rack slide. In addition, it has an easy-to-load magazine, an easy-to-clean design, an easy-to-pull 5-pound trigger, and an MSRP of $450 to $500, which is relatively easy on the wallet, too. Available in 9mm, .380 Auto, and the new .30 Super Carry, the M&P Shield EZ offers adequate protection and peace of mind, especially for those who are of the opinion that no self-defense handgun should be chambered in 22LR. For older people who have problems with recoil management, I'd highly recommend the EZ chambered for the .380 Auto, loaded with one of the best standard pressure .380 Auto ammo for self-defense available today, the Underwood 68-grain Extreme Defender. But in case you haven't heard of the 30 Super Carry before, in a nutshell, it's a brand new cartridge developed by Federal and will be released this year as a competitor for both the 9mm and .380 Auto. It shoots a slightly smaller and lighter projectile at high velocities, giving it the ballistic performance and recoil of the 9mm, but because of the smaller footprint, it offers a 20% ammo capacity advantage, as the standard EZ magazine that holds only 8 rounds of 9mm will have room for 10 rounds of 30 Super Carry. I may be able to make a more in-depth video on the topic, just let me know if you want me to, by commenting below. But for the purposes of this video, I wouldn't recommend purchasing the M&P Shield EZ chambered for the 30 Super Carry because it has a heavier recoil compared to the .380 Auto. Number 3. Walther CCP M2 and .380 Auto. When Walther designed their original CCP, which stands for Concealed Carry Pistol, their goal was to build a 9mm handgun operated by a gas-delayed blowback system typically used in handguns chambered for cartridges that are weaker than the 9mm. The result was a lightweight subcompact CCW released in 2014 with an easy-to-rack slide, a trigger pull weight of only 5.5 pounds, and a superbly accurate barrel with a length of only 3.5 inches, something many people considered a major feat. There was only one caveat. The CCP required a special tool for disassembly, which makes cleaning it a real pain. But despite that little drawback, people loved it. 4 years later, Walther released a new and improved version, the CCP M2. It's practically the same as the original CCP with the same chambering, the same easy-to-pull slide, the same trigger pull weight, and the same accuracy. The only major difference between the original CCP and the M2 is that the M2 doesn't require that special tool for disassembly anymore. CCW enthusiasts loved it even more than the first CCP. A year after the M2 was released, Walther announced the CCP M2 chambered for the .380 Auto, which is every bit as good as its predecessor. It's chambered for a weaker cartridge, but also makes its recoil a lot easier to handle, making it one of the best CCW options for senior citizens. It's around $20 more expensive than the Smith & Wesson EZ chambered for .380 Auto, but it's worth every penny in my opinion, as I personally carry one loaded with Underwood's 68 grain Extreme Defender. For those of you who don't know, this particular load by Underwood uses a solid copper projectile with flutes. Number 4. Sig P238. This darling of many firearms pundits, aficionados, and communities, Sig Sauer has become the most popular firearms manufacturer in the world after the U.S. Army replaced the Beretta M9 and adopted the Sig P320 in 2017 as their new standard-issue sidearm with the military designations M17 and M18. But I'm not recommending the P238 because of any of the company's accolades. The Sig P238 is known for having one of the better factory triggers and one of the easier-to-rack slides on any ultra-compact pistol on the market today. It may not have the same polymer frame as the Sig P320s, but it's still fairly lightweight thanks to its diminutive size and aluminum frame. For something so small that can only support a barrel measuring 2 2/10 inches, the Sig P238 is known to be one of the most accurate ultra-compact pistols as well. As far as recoil management, the Sig P238's recoil is easy to control, thanks in part to its .380 Auto chambering. I'm aware I've mentioned the 68 grain Extreme Defender more than a few times now, but if you need a .380 Auto defensive load with just a little more oomph to it, Underwood's 90 grain Extreme Penetrator might be of interest. It's going to have a slightly heavier recoil, but it should still be fairly manageable, especially when fired from the Sig P238. With all that said, if there's one thing I don't really like about the Sig P238, it's the relatively hefty price tag. Street prices are within the $600 to $700 range, which make it one of the more expensive CCW options I could recommend. But most senior citizens these days have a higher-than-average disposable income, so I would wholeheartedly recommend the Sig P238 to them. Number 5. Kimber Micro 380. I'm not exactly crazy about any of the firearms Kimber puts out. Their new K6S 357 Magnum revolver line has become popular since its release, and their 1911s have the look and feel of custom builds like Fusions and Wilson combat stuff, but cost a little less. And yet, like most people with a 9 to 5, I can't shy away from the fact that I'm a little more biased towards firearms on the budget side of things, which is why I tend not to recommend a lot of Kimber firearms to anyone. But I do recommend some of their models from time to time. And for senior citizens, I think the Kimber Micro 380, even with its $652 price tag, is hard to beat. In fact, as far as value for the money, the Kimber Micro 380 is in the same weight class as the Sig P238. Both models could go head-to-head against each other, and I could pick one over the other any day without feeling bad about my decision. As far as recoil control, the Kimber Micro 380, chambered for the 380 Auto, doesn't have much recoil to begin with. And like the Sig P238, the Kimber Micro 380 has an aluminum frame, which means its recoil should be more than manageable, even for someone who has bad arthritis. The trigger pull on the Kimber Micro 380 is advertised to be around 7 pounds, 2 pounds heavier than the Sig P238's, but it doesn't take away from its accuracy. Even with its relatively short barrel that only measures 2 3/4 of an inch, it's capable of 2-inch groups out to 15 yards. The Kimber Micro 380 uses an 8-pound recoil spring, which is 3 pounds lighter than the recoil spring in the Sig P238. So as far as ease of racking the slide, the Kimber Micro 380 slide may be just a tad bit easier to rack, but your mileage may vary. And that's it for my list of the top 5 concealed carry weapons for senior citizens. I'm well aware that some of you may want other CCW models included on the list. You can let me know by posting a comment down below. If you find these types of videos helpful, please like, share, and subscribe, and click on that bell icon so you don't miss out on any new content. And as always, thanks for watching.